Hello and welcome to Diecast Restos. I'm Jason and this week I have for you a Matchbox 6A Quarry Truck. This little classic was produced by Lesney between 1954 and 1959. Clearly mine is missing its rear tipper, but this is easily replaced with a reproduction. All were painted orange, had a grey tipper and were enhanced with gold trim to the grille and tanks to either side. Here's an example with its tipper fitted. And this is a Euclid dump truck that it is loosely based on. To take this casting apart, all that is required is for the crimped axle ends to be uncrimped, as it were, and I have it completely unassembled. I sometimes wish all castings were this straightforward. But let's get into its story after the paint strip. During its 5 years of production, little changed on the Quarry Truck. The paint remained the same throughout, as did the location of the gold trim on the grille, left side fuel tank, and triangular shape cast behind the cab. Here's my reproduction tipper that I sourced from Steve Flowers Model Supplies. These tippers hinged on two pips cast into the rear of the chassis, and although these could easily be pulled apart, it does tip remarkably well. All models came with grey metal wheels fitted to flat and later dome-headed crimped axles. However, a short late run had grey plastic wheels fitted. These were so rare that one example back in 2004 fetched £5,000. Adjusted for inflation, that figure would be closer to £8,500 today, or $10,500 US. There were a couple of minor variations to the casting during production. The cross members to the tipper could be rounded or more squared off, while another lengthened the brace above the front axle. It was replaced by the slightly larger 6B Euclid Quarry Truck in 1959. I restored that model's replacement, the 6C Euclid Dump Truck, back in the summer of 2021. There I went into detail on the history of Euclid. The model has a lot of visual similarity to a Euclid R24 dump truck, but whether it is actually recreating an R24 or not isn't clear. During the early 50s, when this casting was first released, Euclid had been involved in a period of great expansion. The company had been taken over by General Motors on the 1st of January 1954. This provided capital and enhanced their design capability. During this period, Euclid produced 2 and 3 axle dump trucks with the ability to carry up to 105 tons. For the chassis, I use Highcoat's Ford Carnival Red to recreate the dark orange it originally had. I used this recently on my Tomica Maserati Resto mod. The tipper is coated in TS17 gloss aluminium, though in hindsight I should have perhaps used a flatter grey. Once that has received 2 coats, I go over it with Highcoat clear lacquer. I think this is the first time that I've restored a model that originally had gold trim. Where I'd usually turn to my Molotow chrome pen for silver trim, I need to use my Artistro gold paint pen for this job. As I said earlier, trim is applied to the grille and headlights, fuel tank, and the cast-in triangle that fits between the cab and tipper. Again, once all of that has dried, it is clear coated. Next, the wheels are returned to the chassis, with the axle ends crimped once again to secure them. The tipper has to be carefully fitted, but with some force behind it. Lastly, chrome is rolled onto the axle ends. So this is how the 6A Quarry Truck looked to begin with. Missing its tipper, this Euclid truck consisted of only its chassis and 6 wheels. This is the earliest casting that I've worked on so far, so I wanted to give this model the treatment and respect it deserves. Though a fairly common model, it is nearing 70 years of age, so it has to be handled with care. But with its repro tipper, let's see how it now looks. That's much more like it. The Quarry Truck is looking a lot better for having its tipper on the chassis again. The high coat Ford Carnival Red is a good match to the original paint shade, while the Artistro Gold has turned out well for the trim. As I mentioned earlier, maybe I should have used a flatter grey for the tipper, but I think that it has turned out rather well in Tamiya's TS17 gloss aluminium. But let me know what you think. Do you enjoy restorations on these really early Matchbox castings, or do you prefer something a bit more contemporary? Let me know in the comment section. Make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date with all of my releases. Thanks to my existing subscribers, and in particular my channel members who support on Patreon and through YouTube memberships. But all that leaves me to say is thanks for watching, and I'll see you again for the next one. Bye for now.